Going over to the cultural part of the podcast, you have migrants stealing from a honesty box, and people are, well, shocked, saying that's due to multiculturalism. That's brought to us thanks to AKA on X, and he says, quote, "Wild how they track down the migrants who robbed the honesty box. Either you keep a high-trust country, or you open the door to multicultural chaos. You don't get both." That's about 24 seconds here. How many eggs is that piece of shit stealing? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it 5 by 5? I believe the trays are 5 by 5. 5. Yes. 5 by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's, what was it? 125 eggs? Again, there's a reason I paid an accountant. So they both stole 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 trays of eggs, about 125 eggs a piece. This guy, I think, is stealing potatoes or something. What's the other bag? There's a random bag of stuff, too. And they just left. And thankfully, some internet justice, thanks to, modern technology, they're able to track these pieces of shit down. And a lot of people are saying, well, it's because of multiculturalism, it's foreigners, which Americans also steal, too. I think you're seeing a big shift now in terms of the percentage. They are, in many cases, committing more acts of crime, well, especially hurting women and children, which, again, another topic for another time, perhaps. But yeah, this is what happens when you don't have a high-trust society anymore. And it is sad that the United States, and again, this is also due to, well, getting to politics, liberal judges letting people out, 72 to 100 times? Ridiculous. This stuff does not happen in Dubai. They have some multiculturalism over there, not to the extent of the United States. But in Dubai, they're very, very strict on crime. I think you're seeing more and more of stuff like this happen because, well, we're not tough on crime. And yeah, certain cultures, well, honesty and integrity are differently defined there. And it's just where this reminds me of camping as a kid. And it's something where, going to Michigan with my dad, doing a fishing trip, you get a little camper. Well, we didn't have a camper. We just did the pop-up, I think it was a Coleman branded tent. And it's an instance where, well, it's fun to chop your own firewood, but in some cases you just buy a bushel. And especially in Michigan, a lot of families over there had a farm or they had, some extra trees, so they cut them down and they put these, trying to think of it, basically a small little wooden structure, which, well, makes sense. They got free wood from the property, but it's an instance where, be almost like a Walmart shelf with dividers. So on their front lawn, they'd have maybe 10 to 20. They have a storage unit of 10 to 20 little bushels of firewood. Already pre-cut. If you want to make kindling out of it, you'd hammer it. Well, you use the axe and hammer to make it a little bit smaller. And there's a little sign just suggested $5 to $10. And there's no cameras. There's just a pretty robust lockbox with a good old lock on it, of course. And just take your cash and put them in there, and you would take one bundle out. And it's one of those things where how old was I? Maybe 5 or 6. And to me, it was very interesting. Obviously, we paid, and I was just like, I asked my dad, like, how did that get, because we grew up, unfortunately, well, for better or worse, a suburb of Chicago where, high crime. But, Michigan, a lot safer, a lot less crime, well, especially except for Detroit, of course. But I asked my dad, how do they stay in business? How are people not stealing it? And, my dad just said, it's about doing the right thing when no one's looking. And certain parts of the world, certain cultures, certain people, you can have things like this. And this is also not like this isn't the person's way of making a living. They're just making some extra money on the side. Like, that's, probably why they don't have cameras. Or maybe they had cameras, we didn't see it. I was a kid, wasn't paying attention to that. And I'll never forget, my dad gave me the cash, you'd have to fold up the cash to make it fit into a little slot in the cash box or lockbox. And yeah, we did that for several years. And I asked my dad, like, do people steal? He's like, yeah, probably, but they're not good people. It's going to happen, but majority of the time, you go there. I remember my dad would want the best wood, so what he would do, he would, there'd be one spare one where it's not filled up with wood already. So he'd pick and choose and make the custom one, but always make sure at the end of the day, you only took the amount that you're allocated, and each of the bushels that you took from, you mixed it around, which you could debate, is it really fair to, pick the best of the best in terms of chopped wood? But he's very measured in terms of only taking that amount that would fit into these little containers before he took any. And, you'd always leave things better than you found them type of thing. And that kind of carried over to the campground. And yes, an instance where it's sad that the culture in the United States is decaying. We're seeing more and more theft, and I hope they shouldn't just be thrown in jail. Maybe they get deported or they're put in jail for 30 years, hard labor. So he's getting ROI out of these scoundrels. But it is really heartbreaking to think our country is becoming worse and worse. And again, a lot of people are saying this is due to multiculturalism. I mean, you don't have to go far to see Americans doing this in places like Chicago, San Francisco, especially. I mean, there's a lot of the cities, or as I pejoratively call them, shitties, Dearborn, Michigan, where those cultures are decaying too. And you have, people who are American citizens who they're stealing left and right. And again, I think it's a culture thing as well as a legal thing in terms of the law not fully prosecuting criminals to the full extent. Because we have very terrible liberal activist judges all across the United States, even in red states too, which is also the importance of voting in everything you can. Because again, some judges are actually appointed and voted on a local level. Some, of course, are appointed other ways. But it's an instance where, these are just pieces of shit. And again, this is kind of a video from a couple years back, but it's sad to think how our country seems to be getting worse and worse, and you have less and less trust in society. You see this on the camera apps, or the neighborhood doorbell apps like Ring and a couple other ones. You'll see a lot of your neighbors having stuff stolen right off their front porch because bad guys know that hardly everyone get prosecuted. In the United States, you can't. I think you should. Now again, it's a state-by-state basis. Even in Texas, you're not legally allowed to defend your personal property by any means necessary. I think you should. If you had the legal ability or legal right to defend your personal property with deadly force, and that happened a couple of times, I can't help but think theft would dramatically decrease. Now again, in places even like Texas, which is annoying in terms of, I think Texas should be a lot harsher on crime. Even in Texas, again, someone goes on your front lawn and steals something from you, you can't do anything. You can't defend your property. You should be able to. You can only defend yourself and the life of your family, or the life of people around you. If you feel like your life is in danger, only then, again, not legal advice, only then can you use deadly force. Which again, I think you should be able to use it more often. But again, a lot of these criminals know more often than not, they're not going to get prosecuted, and no one will know. Maybe you could say it's because they're, some of these cultures don't value religion or an afterlife, or the sense of those type of moralities. I think that's definitely something that could be into play, so to say. Let's just say you don't see this happening in a lot of heavy Catholic neighborhoods. Again, there's some charlatans in every religion, of course, but overall, I tend to think there's less in that. Now, going to the comments, when the first one comes to us, thanks to the real Dickie, says, it's not enough to reclaim the property, interest must be paid, gave him 7 likes. Yep. Texas Nana says, in San Antonio, they'll take anything you have outside, gain 3 likes. Minnesota Jen says, quote, this behavior is precisely why other countries are shitholes they will never learn, getting 6 likes. Which, appropriate named Minnesota Jen because, they're becoming this more and more. Let's see here. But, yeah. And unfortunately, again, if you're trying to do this type of thing on your property, you have to have copious amounts of cameras, and it almost isn't worth it anymore because, again, so many people will steal, some people even will try to take the lockbox and take the cash. It's becoming worse and worse, but maybe it's just one of those days I'm being blackpilled, but let me know your thoughts, because, I'm trying to think, if I had the privilege of owning a house or property, would I do this if I had, spare wood or spare eggs that I wanted to sell? And with all the hassle of the legal liability of someone coming on your property, then you have to worry about them stealing, unfortunately, at the end of the day, is it really worth the risk? Would you, if you had personal property, or if you were in this situation where you could, try to sell extra firewood or candles, would you do it, or is it not worth the risk or not worth your time? Let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, try to get 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so click that button. I greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or comment is a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, anyone, everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.